We can teach the all about the drone?
Yeah, we're just going to go through a basic PowerPoint.
That's it. And next month you repeat the same lecture, right?
Yep.
So maybe I will a couple of times take your course and maybe
by all means,
understand them. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have them online and everything else.
You don't mind, though, right?
You can come in as much as you like, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Good, I just did it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I like attending the too.
By all means.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. Happy to see everybody. It is 1:26, January 26th at 5:40. We're a few minutes past the start time. I got wrapped up trying to get everything set up, but thanks for joining. I have one student with me today in person today, so thanks for being here for that. And yeah, we'll jump in a couple minutes here, but welcome to Intro to Drones. So today we'll talk about some basic things, but to start off, you bought a drone, you don't know how to fly, welcome to the class. That's kind of the idea of it. So we'll go through some of the very basics. As always, if anybody has any questions on the interwebs here, just comment and then I'll be able to see everything on here. As far as any questions in class, just interrupt whenever you have a question. Let me switch over to the presentation and then we will get started. All right. Pull this to the side. That's fine. Perfect. All right. So, drone basics. First thing I always start off with every slide. Whoop, wrong one. Where to go when all else fails. So again, I'm a great information, or I'm a plethora of information that you can get, so that way you know how to fly or you understand the drones. But a couple of important notes always. Read your owner's manual first and foremost. You should be reading this just to make sure you understand the drone, everything else. When you get one of these drones, a lot of the times they won't give you an owner's manual or instructional guide. My recommendation is as soon as you download the app on the phone and you go through all the settings, it should give you a basic rundown of how it flies, the controls, everything else. So it really helps you understand before you get started. YouTube is a great resource too. If you don't understand a certain part of the drone or an aspect of the flying part, YouTube will have so many videos out there to talk about one drone, multiple drones, drone flying, drone crashing, footage, all that sort of thing. And then I always like to mention Masterclass. Through the pandemic, Masterclass really came to popularity. You have a lot of people who are #1 in their industry who know a lot of really amazing things, whether that's about painting, drawing, writing, flying, all that sort of thing, and that they impose that knowledge on you. So it's a really fun feature or a fun service to sign up for and to learn more about. I know it does cost money, but definitely worth it. So where do you go, or where do your pictures go, or videos? And make sure you have two. What do I mean by that? For all these drones, they take a micro SD card. Some of the more higher end drones might take a full SD, but standard drones that at least we have here at Apt, they all take micro SD cards. Micro SD cards are going to be the way that you save the video. No camera, no drone, no nothing that you get will have any internal storage. Some of the action cameras, like DJI, has some internal storage. GoPro, I believe certain generations have some internal storage, but for the majority of them, they all require that you get an SD card. The reason they don't include one is because everybody picks and chooses their SD cards based on what they need. Some people need something with a faster read and write speed. Some people just need something with good storage size. Some people like to just get the cheapest ones they can so they can have multiple of them. Figure out what kind of user you are, or ask the questions to figure out what type of user you are, and you should be able to dictate what type of SD card that you need. I usually recommend for anything that's video related, you at least want to be a gigabyte size of 128 gigabytes or higher. And I usually recommend a read and write speed of at least 280 megabytes a second. That would be the fastest that you can go. I think it's the best for video. If you're doing photo, a slower quality is totally fine, but I think for a higher quality, especially for video, you want something with a little bit of a faster read and write speed for your video's sake, for the processing sake, for transferring. It just helps a lot.
So when you're going to buy the drone and they come with that.
It will
card?
not. It'll not come with a card. No, that's what I was saying earlier. You got to buy one of the cards.
So how much that cost?
It can differ.
You know what? You talk about it right now.
Depending on which. If you're going for that one,
per second, whatever.
if you're going for that one, it's going to be a higher end one, so probably about $100 to $200, depending. If you're doing anything lower than that, they can be probably anywhere between about $30 or more.
Okay. So then you can. It's not you buy it separate.
Mm-hmm. You have to buy separate.
They come with that.
Mm-hmm. So process to go through. The bitterness of a poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. I use the same quote in my camera classes. I like this one a lot. Remember that when you're doing anything with cameras, with drones, the more money that you can put into this, the better. It's one of the few art forms where it doesn't really necessarily all rely on skill. A lot of it relies on the equipment that you have. So yes, a good sales price or getting something for a bargain is a great thing, but keep that in mind with quality, keep that in with longevity. You know, a lot of the times when we buy certain things, we have to keep in mind that the more money we put into something, usually it'll relate to either something of better quality, either something that's a little bit stronger or more durable, something that'll last longer. And when it comes to camera gear, quality is really what you're speaking about when you're talking about the low versus the high prices. And so I always like to keep that in mind. There's a trade-off when you're thinking of that stuff. If you have the extra couple $100s to put into a project or to put into a piece, I would definitely recommend doing that. If a budget is the concern when you're first getting into this, do whatever works in your price range. But always remember that if you try to save a few bucks in the long run of things, it might end up either hurting the video quality, flight time in this case, actual quality of the drone, cameras, all that sort of thing. Your pictures should never live on your memory card. A lot of people will keep them only on the memory card and won't do anything else with them, or they'll do light things, but their primary use of getting the photos or videos is all through the memory card. And you shouldn't do that. The memory card, while yes, it's a great way to store things, it's very fragile. It can break very easily. It can succumb to damage. So it's important that we're putting our videos, our files in multiple sources, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. First things first, you don't want to lose your pictures or damage your card. So when you're flying your drone, when everything's done, you're going to want to make sure that you land the drone and turn the unit off. That's the first and foremost. Make sure that you're returning to home on there, and we'll talk about the buttons and what return to home means. You're turning the unit off, and then you're waiting a few seconds, at least 5. More doesn't matter, but don't just immediately go to pick up the drone. A couple different things. You've got propellers that are spinning on the top part there. So when those are spinning, we definitely don't want to go and pick up the drone because we don't want to, our fingers to get hurt or anything else. But then number 2, we want to make sure that the drone, after it lands, has time to power off. Everything has time to settle down, and that we're not actually removing anything from the drone while the drone is still functioning. After we've done that, we'll remove the card, and we want to place that card into a card reader. Don't use your camera or your drone to read the card or send pictures to your phone. It's a great tool to have to be able to send your images and your videos to your cell phone device, and they have an app that you're able to do that. So as you're flying, you land, you can then take the videos right from the drone and move them to your phone. It will eat the battery life up of both the phone and the drone very quickly. So use a card reader, pop the SD card out of the drone, put it into a card reader, and by doing that, you're now removing the amount of contact space in between. If you have the drone that's then connected via a cable into your computer, you have 3 points of contact in which now this drone is going. If you take the SD card out and put it into a card reader, you now have 2 points of contact. It's the computer and the SD card reader. That's a better way to do it, just so that way there's less in between and there's less room for error, and there's less of a chance that we're going to lose or damage our photos, videos, or the physical drone or SD card. These are examples of card readers. We have a variety here in the store. You can get these guys anywhere for maybe, I'd say, $10 $10 at the most expensive, and they can go all the way up to a couple $100 depending on the quality and the speed of what you're looking at. Also depends too how many different cards it can read. If this is just a standard SD card reader, you probably can get one for about $10 to $14. If this is a compact flash or a higher end card reader, you can be looking anywhere between about $80 to $200 depending. Next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure you're copying to a destination folder. And when I say copy, I mean copy. Don't move the physical file, copy it. You want to make sure that you have multiple files of what you're taking pictures of or doing, because in the long run of things, I look at the spilled coffee scenario. If you have all this photo work and all this work with you and you save it only to your laptop, let's say you spill a cup of coffee on your laptop. Now all of the card work that you've done, all the footage, all the photos, they're all gone. So make sure you're copying it to other locations, not moving it, because you want to make sure that other copies of these files exist. So copy them from your physical SD card into a destination folder. On Windows, you're using Explorer. On Mac, you're using Finder. Make a folder on your desktop, save them all to there, and now you've got the cards on you got the photos or videos on your SD card and on the physical computer. And copy and not move photos to a second place. So I always leave this up to my students. I tell them, figure out what works best for you. External drives, I have examples of those. Those are hard drives, a place that can store a terabyte worth of information, 512 gigabytes worth of information, but it's the main storage point for all of those files to live. Prime Photos, Google Drive, those are examples of cloud-based solutions, and they're really great as well too. They usually just require a username and a password, and what's nice about the cloud-based solution is that the storage lives in the cloud. So you can go anywhere in the world that you want and access your photos and your files. So I really do like that. External drive, you can do the same thing, but you have to carry the external drive with you when you go to places. But everyone's a little bit different. I'm a tangible person, so I like to have a hard drive. I have a lot of friends that rely on Google Drive exclusively when they're doing with all of their photos and videos. So whatever makes you the most comfortable at the end of the day would be great. Just make sure you have 2 different locations. Your SD card does not count as one of them, though however you can leave them on there, and I recommend doing it. I keep all my files on the SD cards, and as I fill them up I then buy new ones. I have 3 points of contact or 4 points of contact for all of my stuff. SD cards, my computer, and then I have 2 separate hard drives at home. One that I keep by my computer desk and one that I keep in a safe underneath my bed. Just in case the house ever burns down or anything were to happen, I want to make sure that I have all of my work centralized in one spot so I can always access it.
SD card, you need a one time to fill it up, the one, and then transport to the hard drive, the one, save the one.
Yeah.
So you make it empty and you're going to use the one?
Yeah, you can use it again, or you can keep everything on there. It's whatever
Or
you prefer.
we should buy that every time we buy that, fill it up the one, buy the another SD card.
You can do that, absolutely.
Which one's a better way to do it? Do you want to keep the buy that?
Both are just the same. It's really whatever peace of mind that works best for you. It's up to you.
But you got the big terabyte or whatever memory you can put in there.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, you can do whatever you want with that one. But I always recommend at least having 2 of those. So SD card can be one way to save it, but that shouldn't be the only way that you do it. You should have 2 more. You can do it on the computer itself, or maybe on a hard drive, or do it on a hard drive and a cloud-based solution. But you should be at least saving them to 2 different spots.
But when like a Microsoft Surface or whatever, currently in a computer, they was in cloud one. Every picture to go to the cloud one.
Yeah, you can do
so
that.
I can retrieve them from the cloud.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
So from you got an email address, you got
Yeah, you can do that too.
retrieve the.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another option too.
Yeah, that's the cloud-based solution. That's exactly what I was just talking about. Yeah.
So this is more popular right now.
It depends. Everyone's a
Still
little bit different.
Still backup system on the hard drive.
As long as you got 2, then you're in a good position.
Okay.
So then from there, you want to make sure you eject the card before physically removing it. Never ever just remove the card. Always eject first. For Apple, you drag to the trash can. For Microsoft or for Windows, you click in the bottom right corner and there's a way to eject it. And then when you're done doing all that, it's important you format the card in the camera. You don't necessarily have to erase the card in the reader. It's a mistake a lot of people make. Once you put the card into the camera and format the card inside the camera, then it'll erase everything. Drones are a little bit different. I definitely would recommend deleting everything from the SD card if you're done with it and then putting it back into the camera. These are examples of your backup plan. So like I said earlier, you've got your SD card. That's your first line of defense to save. Your computer, that's where you're transferring everything to start off with. Then from there, it's your option. If you want to go cloud-based solution on the bottom there, or if you want to go hard drive-based solution. Both are great options. Both work. Everyone's a little bit different with the way they like to do it. I personally like the hard drive. I don't like having to remember usernames and passwords, so I don't use cloud-based solution. I only use hard drives. But I definitely encourage people to try them. They're very easy to use. If you are a subscriber to Prime, you have Prime Photos, and that's completely free to you as long as you pay for Amazon Prime. If you have Gmail, you're probably used to the Google Cloud or to Google Docs and the drive that you have there. They have My Drive, which lets you save all the different files. There's OneDrive, that's from Microsoft. That's a good one people really like. And then there's Creative Cloud, and that's my personal favorite, only because from Creative Cloud you also then have access to all their photo editing and video editing apps. So not only can you store and save stuff, but then you can also go through and edit and change stuff on your files and then allow other people to view it. So it makes it a little bit more conducive as far as collaboration is concerned. So
when you're gonna put down the hard drive with storage they want, you're gonna put down some kind of make them some special folder individual.
You could, yeah, you could if you wanted to,
depending
depending on.
put them same thing.
Yeah.
Very difficult to retrieve which one.
Yeah.
But you're gonna put down the create a folder, put it before you
Sure.
put it in the one.
You can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone's a little bit different with how they store it.
Huh?
Everyone's a little different with how they store it.
What do you do the best way?
I label mine by the month in which I shot.
Oh, you gotta buy by month.
So I go year by year, month by month. So my hard drives date all the way back to about 2002. So I have 12 months from 2002 to 2023, all full of just photos and videos.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So a tour of the drone.
Did it come up there with the automatically come up there one?
It should.
The date they want?
Yeah.
Like a so, like one drive they want that crowd they want. They have show the date they want.
Yeah. So it'll be the same.
Is that right?
Yeah. When you click on the file, it should give you a date and everything
Oh,
else.
is that right?
Yep.
So you got a file to put it in there. They automate the date to come up with.
Yeah, that's the way that I would do it. That's the way that
You're not physically typing.
I'm typing my dates and I'm doing all that. Yeah.
You gotta type in the date.
That's how mine works. I'm not sure how. Again, everyone's is a little bit different depending on how your computer is set up and everything else. So, taking a look at drones, the main one that you're going to see, or the one that's the most popular nowadays, is called the quadcopter. And the quadcopter has 4 propellers. That's why they call it the quadcopter. That offers some of the better stability, especially for video, for photo quality. The quadcopter definitely outperforms all the other ones. So the quadcopter is the most popular at the current moment. But there's many different types. Quadcopter is just one of them. Other drones that you'll see, single rotor. Single rotor is going to look like a helicopter. The brand Air Hogs, you'll sometimes see them at Target, at Walmart. They make various kid-friendly drones and some adult drones that are made more for fun, not as far as video quality and whatnot. You'll see single rotor ones for that. That is more typical for a helicopter. That's going to be for someone who more so wants to get the helicopter flying experience and maybe is into collecting model helicopters, just anything that has a single rotor to it. Quadcopter is the most popular, and that's sold on the consumer level. That's what we're looking at right now when we look at drones, a quadcopter. Quadcopters have 2 different types, FPV and Cinep styles. FPV is going to be a goggle-driven drone. The idea is that it wants you to fly in the first-person view, and typically you're only going to see this as a quadcopter, only because quadcopters are going to have some of the better turning radiuses. So for an FPV drone, a lot of the times what you're getting with FPV is the first-person view, which gives you more of that exciting, exhilarating speed, that first-person view that keeps you right on the nose of how you're flying. It's overall a much more intense experience with the FPV drone. And so flying with goggles is kind of needed in order to get that first-person view. The Cine drones, though, they don't require any goggles and they don't recommend any goggles. And the reason that being is that because while you're flying with a Cine-style drone, the main purpose is to be using the high-quality camera and tracking features. When we look at the DJI lineup, things like their Mavic 3 Cine-style, things like their Air 2S, and I would even say the Mavic 3 Pro or the Mini 3 Pro. Those are all going to be Cine drones that offer a high quality tracking and camera functionality, but they don't necessarily require you to wear any goggles. They're not made to be a first person view type of experience. They're more so made to help you make videos, to do social media, to do some form of videography via the drone. As you get more advanced, hexacopters come in, and hexacopters are six-bladed copters, and they're made more for filming and stability in the air. You're not going to see these really sold on a consumer-based level. You're going to see these in big-budget Hollywood productions. Anytime you watch a movie where the camera looks like it's flying through the air, it was most likely either done on a track or done on a hexacopter. The hexacopter would be a great way of filming with getting the best stability, not shaky, good focus. Really, it's just a step up from the quadcopters.
Like a football game, they want a hexacopter?
Not to my knowledge. With football, they have them on the tracks. The camera goes back and forth on a wire.
There was some wrong there.
That's all on wires. They're not allowed to fly.
On wire?
Yeah. If you ever watch a football game, they have cameras going back via the wires.
Wire.
Mm-hmm.
So you said once again, why need the goggle though?
For the first-person view. If you're buying an FPV drone, exactly, and you have to wear the goggles. Mm-hmm.
What's the benefit of the goggle putting them?
Just for first-person view.
What do you mean first-person view?
So what the drone is seeing is what you're seeing.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's meant for just for fun. For
Oh,
first-person view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you buy an FPV drone, you need to wear the goggles. If you get any other type of drone, they won't require any goggles, like a Cine drone or a single rotor. FPV drones are the only ones that make you wear goggles because it's a first-person view.
So a Cine drone, you don't need a goggle?
No, they won't sell you goggles, and they won't work with the Cine drone.
So just gotta get all the in the picture.
It's all on the controller as you're flying.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, there's the fixed wing rotor. So that's more of a plane experience. Usually there's some form of wind, I hate to say engine because engines are more for like a bigger plane, but there's some form of engine that would fit underneath the wheel or the wings, and then the wings have actual, I can't remember the term off the top of my head, but their wings are basically able to yaw or roll depending on what you have to experience while you're flying. You're not going to really see any fixed wings here on the commercial level or on the consumer level unless it's more of a hobby shop. More people that fly the fixed wing rotors are those that build their own makeshift planes. They build the drone experience with the plane. But that, again, that's more of a hobby shop. So next thing that we'll talk about is the more control layout of these guys. When you're flying, there's two different types of controllers that you can get, and I'll show one example that I have here. This is the basic controller that you can get. So we'll talk about what all the different little features of this are. But basically, to sum it up, when you're flying your drone, you are looking at a screen if you're not doing FPV. The screen is either going to be supplied by the controller, or it's going to require that you connect your phone to it. Both Android and Apple have apps available. So you're able to download and do everything on their actual app itself. But as far as the controller goes, they all are around the same, but they will differ. So the main brand that we sell here in the store, DJI, they are the #1 in the States for drones, especially for consumer level drones. First thing we'll talk about are the control sticks. That's these guys right here. Each stick will have different customizable settings, but with one joystick you control the up and down movements of the drone, as well as the rotation of the drone. The other one you'll control back and forth movements, so back and forth, forth and back, and then side to side movements as well. So once you start flying, it's important that one of the first things you do is figure out which stick does which. And then in the settings, if you prefer to switch it, you should be able to switch to have this side do what this side does and this side do what this side does, depending on what you prefer. From there, you're going to have antennas. Always point them outwards. These are your connection points between the drone and the physical controller. A lot of these drones have anywhere between about a 4-mile radius to about a 10-mile radius in connection. So you can get these a pretty good distance both above and away from you. Nice part is that the drone won't push forward, at least DJI's won't push forward anymore once it gets out of that connectivity range. So once you get it to a certain point where the drone can sense it's losing connectivity, it won't allow you to keep pushing forward. It stays in connection of the controller and the drone.
They don't have any signal, warning signal?
They do, you'll see on the controller, but again, it won't let you push the drone further while you're flying. On the side here, you have your gimbal dial. It's a rotational control over the drone's cameras. If I remove this little plastic bit right here, the camera itself can rotate both side to side and up and down. So using the gimbal dial on the physical controller, that'll give you access to controlling that. A lot of the drones, while you're flying, you'll be able to control from the screen as well too. If it's a touch screen, there's a few other ways around it, but for as far as doing it all from the controller via your hands, you got the gimbal dial right there. Record button, that's going to be on this side right here. It's the red dot. As soon as you get your drone to where you want it to be, you're on subject, everything looks good, you can click the record button and that will start to either record or take a picture depending on what you're doing. On the opposite side, you're going to see a shutter and focus button. The idea with that is that this will give you refocus on what you're filming or shooting, or it'll give you control over the shutter. So it's one of those that's customizable as well too. But with shutter, you can control the speed at which it's closing and shutting. But when you're filming, it'll allow you to refocus so that way, let's say something moves out of the way of the camera's not focused in on it, you click that button, it'll refocus on what it was at, so that way you're getting the best quality video in focus.
So that means when you got a goggle, you can see the controller.
Well, when you have the goggles on, all you're doing, you won't see the controller because the goggles are on your face.
So that means you gotta put the goggle. Your hand, you gotta already know where the button located. Otherwise, you cannot control it.
That's where it comes into practice. And then from there we have the return to home button. That's the other big button to learn. There's a power button over there, but that's pretty self-explanatory. It turns on and off the controller. Return to home though, that's your help button, your safety button. So it gives you the ability to send the drone back to the place it took off from. My only warning is do not use this if on a moving object. I had a gentleman who I sold a drone to who didn't realize that the return to home button would send the drone back to where it took off from. So he was on a boat, the boat started to move, he wanted to do some cool videos of his boat, but then when he returned the drone to where he took off from, it went where it took off the boat from, so it went right in the water. So it's important that you only use the return to home button.
So how can landing down? They got automatically.
When you're doing it, it'll hover back down. And when you click the return to home button, it'll get to a certain point, and then it slowly drops itself down to the ground.
Home button, they gotta come in and they just.
It'll go right where it took off from.
They just got landing by itself.
Yep, it'll take off. It'll drop right where it took off from. Nope. Drops right where it took off from. Okay. And then there's another button on there that'll force land it. That's what you'd want to be using on the screen. That's what's going to help you return it to yourself if you are moving. And then a little bit more of an advanced breakdown. I've got the blueprints of the controllers on here. So you got your antennas, you got your gimbal dial, the return to home button, your power button. On the right stick, that's your pitch and your roll. Your pitch is what controls you going up and down, and then your roll is what helps you turn from one side to the other. Roll will physically roll the whole thing.
So you gotta handle, coordinate the one with like a kid in the game.
Yeah, you just have to practice and learn.
Me and my out.
It's very simple. I've seen.
I want to try to learn from my grandchildren. Let's play with together, but
There you
I'm
go.
out though. They are familiar with them. I'm not.
The throttle will pull it forward or pull it back, and then yaw is what's going to go in one direction or the other. So your roll will flip the guy, and then your yaw will go in one direction or the other. Going from there a little bit more, you've got your a more advanced controller on the right side. That one has the built-in LCD screen, has a flight pause button, so you can just pause the flight where you're at. The 5D button, which gives you a little bit more control over the whole experience. Then you have the removable control sticks, which we have that on this controller too. They just unscrew there so that it makes it a little more compact for when you're traveling. Power buttons, antenna, return to home, control stick storage slot. That's what you'll see on the one side there. That's what stores everything. Mobile device clamp, so that's what goes in between here. When you're flying or when you're using this, the phone would live in between here, so your screen is below and your buttons are on top. Aperture shutter dial, record button, focus shutter button. You have your video downlink power supply. That's what this guy is going to be, but this basically is what does your video saving, or charges your controller in this case, since this isn't the advanced one. And then on the other one, on the more advanced, it has a C1 and a C2 button. This model will not, because there's no reason for it to do any customizable controls, but on some of the fancier models, you can customize 2 buttons on there to do whatever it is that you want those buttons to do. So if there's a certain feature that you really like that you have to access through the screen, you'll be able to access that via the C1, C2 button on the more advanced controllers. So, big drone information to know about, ones that I think are really important. Geofencing. It's a virtual wall. The drones will not allow you to push forward or fly in this area. Typically, the fencing exists by airports, government buildings, national parks, and certain cities and properties. So, depending on where you're located, it's important. If you go to the DJI website, or if you type in geofencing based on location, they'll give you a pretty comprehensive map that shows you exactly what the flight restrictions are in your area. A lot of the times, the drones, because of how smart they are, they're able to connect via the system's advanced tracking features. So especially when you hook your phone up to it, they're able to dictate and tell you where you're at exactly, and they're able to tell you what you can and can't do. For example, you can't fly a drone in a national park. It is not frowned upon. It is illegal. If you get caught flying a drone in a national park, you can receive a fine of anywhere up to $200 to a few $1,000s, depending. Existing by airports, they don't allow you to fly at all. I actually had a gentleman who lived closer to Midway, which isn't too far from Chicago, and he started flying, and he actually had the Midway police drive past the house, and they did come check on him. They knocked on his door because technically they were able to see that there was an unregistered aircraft within the vicinity of the airport. And I believe when they talked to him, he was in the 5-mile radius that's required for you to be a no-fly zone, or for you to fly under a certain height. So it's important that you double check what your rules are before you really invest in one of these, because you might not live in an area that allows for it, and the closest area might be miles away from you that would require a hike to get to. So geofencing, they show you while you're flying too, but I always recommend you can look this stuff up online, and they'll actually show you location by location where you're not allowed to and allowed to fly. And then Pro versus phone controller. This is a phone controller because you're going to use your phone for the application of this. The phone would sit in between the clamps here on the bottom. and then from there you're doing all the controls via the phone and the actual controller. A Pro controller will have the screen built onto it, and this will allow you basically not to use your phone. So if you're someone who has to use their phone for, let's say, business purposes, I have a lot of gentlemen who come in and they buy drones for a contracting company. They don't want to necessarily get on the roof for their clients' houses, so they'll fly the drone up there and they're able to take a video of the customer's roof, show it to them, and then dictate whether or not they need to do repairs or send somebody up to fix a leak, what have you there. They might want to use a Pro controller because for doing that, they don't have to use their phone. Their phone is free in case someone calls or does anything else. And then they can just use the Pro controller to do all the work right there. So the Pro controller can be a bit more expensive. I know for most drones, a Pro controller costs anywhere between $400 to $600. And you have to make sure that the drone you're getting is compatible for that controller. The phone controller that you get with most drones is a standard issue, so it's not. It doesn't add anything to the price of the drone. The drone is still the same, but it really comes down to if you want to use your phone or not use your phone while you're flying. Both are acceptable. So on screen, what you're seeing as you're flying, so you're going to see the distance from you and the drone. It'll keep an exact measurement between how far the drone is and how far you are. Most drones, like I said, have a 4 to 10 to 12 mile radius. So depending on your drone, that should give you some information. I know for something like the Mavic Mini here, you got about a 6.3 mile radius from drone to phone. So if that's the case, you'd be able to see the distance, so that way you know you're in the correct area of distance. Altitude of the drone, you know, in case you're in an area that does restrict your flying capabilities, maybe on the screen it tells you you're not allowed to fly maybe above 1,000 feet, we'll say, for example. The drone, or the screen, on screen, you'd see the altitude of that drone, and then you'd be able to bring yourself down or go higher if you want. You're going to have the ability to switch between photo and video. So that'll allow you to change between whether you're trying to take video of something or if you're trying to take photos of something. You can then toggle between the two. Map with geofencing and surrounding area. So much like a video game has like a little map in the bottom right corner to show you where you're at, where to go for the missions, what have you. This drone, or the drones, will do the same thing, where it'll show you the areas you can't fly in, what geofenced areas are around you, and then it breaks down the surrounding area as well too. So in case you do get out of that area, you know that you only have X amount of feet to go before your drone will lose connection or before that's a no-fly zone. Active track, cancel, or start. Depending on the drone that you have, you might have an active track feature which allows you to select somebody on the screen and then follow them. Let's say that you are recording a dirt bike race. The drone is flying. You can select the racer that you want, and the drone will follow over that one racer and continuously film. Really cool if you're trying to make a movie or if you're trying to do a really cool scene. You can really use that active track feature, but again, has to be included with the drone. I know for intro level drones for the Mavic series from DJI, the Mini 3 Pro will allow you to do active track features, and that I believe starts at a
an active track function. How can
you do it on the screen?
On the screen.
Mm-hmm. Then there's the return.
So you got a screen that you can tell your iPhone, or I got a.
Yeah, or it's built into the controller. It depends on which one you get. Then there's the return to home button. That's that little button I was telling you about earlier. It's going to also live on the screen too. So if you want, you can tap it on the screen and the drone will come back to where it took off and then land. And then the next feature is the immediate land. So this is, let's say you are on the moving boat, you can't do return to home because you've moved from where you took off from. Now is where you'd want to do immediate land, and then it would just come back to you, or you get it as close to you as you physically can, get it over where you're doing the landing, hit immediate land. It'll make you hold it on the screen, and the drone will slowly drop right where you're telling it to immediately land. So make sure you're doing that in a stable sound environment. So understanding permits in the FAA, So what does the FAA stand for? It's the Federal Aviation Association. It is the national government's way of monitoring flying, people with pilot's license, commercial, all sorts of things. There are really only 2 permits that you need to worry about and that you can purchase depending on what you're doing. If you have a drone under 249 grams, so most drones will put their weight class on there. DJI does it right on the bottom there for their Mavic, for the Mini. As long as it's 249 or less.
This is how many grams?
249. So if it's 249 or less, you don't need any type of permit unless you are doing commercial work for business or for pay. It's the only time that you need a permit of some sorts. So if you're just flying this for fun, maybe you put some stuff up on your social media to show your drone usage, what have you, you don't need to have any sort of permit for that because you're not really doing anything for a business unless you're accruing money or pay from that. If you are getting something for pay, that's where we can talk about Part 107. And if you're over 249, that's where you need to register it with the FAA.gov. So this can be accessed on their website, costs $5, includes a course and information that's needed to be read. After completion, you must clearly write out the permit number on the drone. So once you've completed the FAA's regulations, you paid your $5, you get your serial number, you're going to write that serial/permit number on the physical drone, whether that's with Sharpie or a little stick-on note. But what that does is, let's say you get stopped one day by some sort of official, either a police officer, government official, what have you, and they ask what the permit number is on the drone based on what you're flying. If you don't have that and you're above the 249 grams, you can be ticketed. If you have it and you're below the 249 grams, they really can't say anything to you because you are under the required weight limit in order to report anything. Yeah. So the only reason you need to get it is if you are overweight on your drone, or if you are, really it's only if you're above that 249 grams is what you need it. Part 107 is a little different. You pay $175 and you take a course on flying, and after completion you can now then do commercial or business-based work with your drones. So if you're a business, you are trying to show off, maybe let's say your business's storefront, and you want to do a cool video of the drone and it flies through the door of the business, gets a recording of the inside of the store, and then flies back out. You need a permit to do that, especially if then you're going to use that video to make profit or to monetize off of that. If whatever you're doing is for recreational purposes and it's not for a business of any kind, then you're totally fine. You don't need that as well either. Typically, I've only seen people get Part 107 when they're getting some of the heavier duty Mavic 3 drones, the ones that cost $3,000 to $5,000, and they're doing videos for, let's say, the business down the street that wants to get the aerial shot of the front of the store. Maybe they're doing it for my example would be in high school, we would do this event where we would then, before we did our school's event for pep rally week, we would take a big picture of the whole school. And so they would fly a drone up to get it in position so they could get a beautiful picture of everybody down below. Technically, because someone's being paid to do this for their business to take that photo, that person flying would need, number one, to register for the $5, but then also, two, would have to pay that $175 and take that course so that they can then do commercial or business-based flying. And then basics of drone footage. This takes us into the end of everything, but this is really what I consider to be a more basic understanding of what to look at with drones when it comes to footage and how we want to make things look appealing. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it, and there's a lot of different techniques, but these are just some easy tricks and tips that you can employ in order to make your videos look a little bit nicer as you're flying. So one of the first things I talk about is using that active track feature. On my little short video, or this little short GIF or GIF, however you want to pronounce it, you can see there's a little blue square around one of our soccer players. If this drone was moving basically the drone would keep distance between itself and whoever it's tracking, and it would follow that person in particular. It would record everything that it sees, but its primary focus or primary thing would be keeping the person in focus and only recording them. It'll record everything around it, I should say, but its main purpose and focus is to follow and track the person circled in a blue or green box. And when I was talking earlier about all the different stuff that you'll see on screen, this is an example of it too. So you'll see the return to home, the immediate land, switch between photo, video, your map on the bottom corner, your altitude, so as heights, and your distance from controller, all that. So active tracking objects, this would be an example. I had a gentleman I sold a drone to who wanted to do something similar in California. There's a Lakeshore Drive apparently in California as well as Chicago. In California though, you actually go along the ocean front and the ocean coast. And so it's supposed to be a beautiful scenic mountain area. This gentleman wanted to do something similar where he had the drone positioned above him, it was actively tracking him, and he was able to drive his motorcycle for 30-ish minutes before the drone's battery died out. Pan out and get the whole environment. One of the things that we can do with drones that makes it so unique is how tight you can get on your footage and how then you can quickly pan out and get the whole scene in a very quick couple seconds. So use that to your advantage. Your drone is nimble, it's fast, it moves quickly, and depending on the model that you get, they can be very tiny. When this thing's all folded up, it's really no bigger than my hand when the wings are back folded in on itself. When the wings are out, the size does go up, but maybe to the size of about 2 of my hands put together. So these don't have the biggest of footprints. So when you're filming, you can get really tight with what you're doing. You can go really fast, and you can really do some cool video techniques where you slowly start to film everything in front of you, and you quickly pan out in order to get more of a cinematic or scenic experience. That is something that you can do. And then film environment first, then pan into a subject. So the vice versa of what we're talking about. So in this case, the video here, or the GIF in particular, it's filming the scene, but what it's first doing is seeing the subject matter as it goes by, going past that to get the scope of where they're at, and then this would probably tail back around to start filming our climbers as they're going up the mountain. But this can help create suspense, over dramatize things, add a little bit more scale to what we're doing. We can see how big these mountains are and the range by panning out and by really trying to get the entire area in one big shot. But we get how small the scale of our climbers are because we're doing that too. So there's a give and take depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. I would say panning out to get the whole environment really helps to understand and break down where we're at, so we get a better feel for maybe the severity of how small we are, how big our environment is. But then showing something like this on the next one might show our relationship to scale when it comes to this environment. And especially a mountain range like this, it's very beautiful, breathtaking, so it's definitely worth trying to capture something like this for a video. And then use FPV to hug your environment. So one of the things you can do with those first-person goggles is do this, where you're hugging the mountain range like this gentleman is or like this person is, and they're able to get this very close-up experience that we as humans would never be able to experience. This was definitely done with something probably more of a hexacopter, something that's a little more professional of a video. But this is very achievable on a standard drone as long as you have the better flight capabilities and you're more trained as far as how this goes. But definitely using the environment to the benefit of the camera, what looks the best as you're flying, as you're filming. That's the key to this whole thing. Bigger than life scenery images. If you're taking pictures for any kind, the best part about the drone is using it to capture all of something. When you look at this road, it's probably spread into multiple parts that last for hundreds of feet. So getting all of this in one shot from the ground level would be impossible. But when you're up in the air, you're able to use the fact that the drone has an advantage point that you never would be able to get to without being in a helicopter or plane. So use that to your advantage. Use this to show scale, to show the power. We know that these are roads, but being from this high up, it almost looks like a little video game course. Like it doesn't look like a real course or a real road. And then once you look more closely, you see the winding patterns, you see the detail in the rocks and in the cliffside there. You really get the idea of scale and size. And then I like this one the most. A lot of people ask me what's the most practical use of drones. Show off your events, show off your parties with group photo. This weekend I'm getting ready to help out with the Chicago Polar Bear Club, and one of the things that we talked about was trying to possibly take big pictures of everybody, and it's an idea that's crossed my mind. I like to stand on a ladder and take pictures of people, but one of the things that could be done to get a really awesome picture or video would be to fly a drone and get this nice dramatic shot of everybody together. Like I just mentioned to my one student here in class, when I was in high school, we would have somebody professionally come in with a drone and take a giant picture of our whole high school group together. And it was a really cool thing because you would see 900, 800 kids all in one big photo, and you wouldn't be able to do that with a regular camera or from just standing and trying to take a picture. It's only something that could go hundreds of feet up in the air to really get everybody encapsulated. That's really the best way to do it. So this is a great example of that. And then other things to keep in mind, if you go online, YouTube, there's so many different people that are talking about this that have really awesome functionalities. Something with DJI, if you get one of the controllers that has the screen, and the one on the left is an example of that, that would allow you to transfer from your actual controller to your phone. And there's videos and tutorials on how to do that. So really nice, especially if you want to edit the photos and videos on your phone, if you prefer doing that than on the computer. On the right side, DJI also has a Fly app video editing system. So when you do get to start flying and you really test this out, you can download those videos to your phone and then just immediately start playing and editing with them. So if I were flying with something like this guy, I could then take those videos and save them immediately to my phone and then start working on them right there. Other things to look at with the drones, it is a little, I would say it's, you definitely want to get more batteries right off the bat. I can't recommend that enough. Typically with these drones, you have anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes worth of flight time. Some of the nicer ones will have hour-long flight or 40-minute long flight times. But that's kind of short in the grand scheme of things. So what I always tell people is the more batteries you can get, the better. You definitely won't regret it in the long run of things. For example, with DJI, one of the things that they have or they offer is these battery packs that come with a charging hub. So this whole charging hub can be plugged in to get the battery to charge in the wall. Then the batteries can slide into the drone. Each battery is going to give me about 30 minutes worth of flight time. So in the grand scheme of things, I should be able to fly for about about an hour and 30 minutes with these 3 batteries. So keep that in mind depending on what you're flying, what you're recording.
So
Exactly, you can recharge them, but when you're out and about, it's a little hard to do.
you put it away.
In the drone.
How can you
It goes inside. Every drone's different, so this is going to look a lot different than other drones. But that's an example of how that would go in.
So usually 30 minutes.
About 30 minutes. Every drone's different.
What about this controller?
Controller will have a battery life too, but it's a low latency, so you don't. It should last you at least the whole flight.
That is what kind of battery they need?
It charges itself. There's a little charging button on the side there. Yeah, so you'll plug it in to charge.
You don't need a battery, just charge.
No, just charge. So I definitely would recommend getting the extra batteries. That's probably the biggest thing. Extra propellers are nice too. People do run into problems where they crash, or when you're flying. If I were to show you these propellers on here, they're some of the most flimsy pieces that you can get. So almost every drone that you'll get will give you at least 2 extra pairs of propellers with the extra screws. As you're going, even if you don't hit anything, as these fly, as these become stressed out, they do break. They're very thin pieces of plastic, but that's really what it needs to be able to spin the rotors and to get this thing off the ground. So it doesn't need a lot of weight to it, especially with the speed at which these rotors are spinning. You'll be able to get off the ground no problem. It's just if in the case of these breaking or snapping, you've got then at least 2 extra sets of propellers that you can use. So definitely would recommend the extra propellers too. But all in all, I would say the batteries and 1 set of propellers should be enough for you to get started with it. If you buy the drone by itself, it'll come with the controller, it'll come with a battery, so it gives you everything that you need. Just get a micro SD card. That's the only other thing I would recommend for storage space, so that way you can download all your videos.
So then anyway, this one is 1 battery, 30 minutes the capacity. So every 30 minutes you have to bring back.
You have to charge. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So
or you gotta
exactly.
This extra battery put in the replace with them.
Yep.
So every 30 minutes you gotta come down.
Yep. Yep. And they give you warnings. They show you the charge capacity on the drone on the screen, everything. Other than that, get a bag for it, get your charging hub. This is a really nice way of charging all batteries at once. Get the extra memory cards. Like I said, you should always have at least 2, no matter what. Lens cleaning kits are great. If it rains or you get any smudge on the lens, you can easily just wipe it off. An external hard drive, like we talked about earlier. Some of these drones will have filters that you can put on there. We don't really talk too much about those, but I'd recommend if you are getting into the drone flying, look into filters, look into how they help with the light and everything else that cuts through, and classes and workshops. Again, YouTube is probably the greatest source out there. There's not a thing on YouTube you can't look up and find a video for. So I always recommend look up on YouTube, find some videos, find how people are discussing this. And one of my favorite things is if you're new to this world and you're buying a product, when you buy the product, go on YouTube and type in 10 things you didn't know about whatever the product's name is. And you will find at least 100 videos on just 10 secret things that you didn't know about the item that you bought. It's a great resource. I tell it to every person who buys a camera brand new or a drone brand new and isn't familiar with it. It's a great way to get into it. And that is all I have for you guys. So that is it for class today.
That's good, though.
So I'm glad you liked it. So thanks for everybody who joined online. I'm not seeing a lot of questions on here, so I'll keep the screen open so people have it. My name's Saxon. I don't know if I.
You have another credit card with the name card downstairs, right?
Yeah. I've got all my.
Will it show to your email, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Yeah, it'll show all that stuff on there. What I tell people.
This one is for me. Is a lot of technical word. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah.
So that's why I gotta try to learn.
Absolutely. And this class is on.
Interesting there.
Yeah.
I'm basically mechanical engineer and retired. So it's like electronic, but I'm not much there. But I want to charge with the electric department too.
Yeah.
So we have used the radio frequency and receiver and transmitter.
Yeah.
To apply with that, and a lot of door opener, glass door openers, and the kind of stuff that I use there. So
for sure.
So familiar with that area.
Yeah.
But that's why I say
it's all new.
Different frequencies.
Yeah. Frequencies and everything else, I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah,
I'd have to do more research.
In the industry, they have a
different
level.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Otherwise, the military they control.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you got shooting down.
But it's a great way to get into it, and I'm glad for everybody that was online. Thanks for coming in today.
It was very good.
Yeah, I do this every Thursday except for the third Thursdays of the month. So the first Thursday is my basic camera class, so that will be, just so everybody has the dates, February 2nd. So next Thursday, February 2nd, will be my camera basics class at 5:30. Camera basics class. And then we'll be doing then the next Thursday, so February 9th will be my camera intermediate, and then we'll take a break for that third Thursday, and I believe there's 5 Thursdays. No, there's only 4. So the 23rd, the last Thursday of the month, will then be my drone class again.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Perfect.
I gotta keep going moving.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you coming in. Thanks for showing up today. And then
I gotta go to your card again.
Yes, grab it. Yeah, it'll be down there. Grab that in the video.
I'll go down there.
Yeah, by all means.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Session.
You're very welcome, sir. Thanks for coming in.
That's very good, though.
But yeah, if you just ask anybody down there, they'll hand you both my cards.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, I'll keep this open for a little bit longer. If anybody online has any questions,
So you're gonna go down right now?
I'm not going down right now. No, I'm going to keep this open for a little bit longer, so people.
So that means the card is over there?
Yeah, the cards are all down there. If you just ask for my card, they'll all hand them to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, sir.
Thank you so much. Sir.
Anytime. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for everybody who was online today, as always. I was a little less sleepy today, given that I had a student in class, which was really nice for me. I apologize for the last class where I was yawning a little bit, and I think my eyes kind of went back in my head a little bit on the last one. So, but we're good now. Trusty water and a lot of coffee beforehand. But I'll leave this open for another couple minutes here. If anybody has any questions or comments or concerns, now is the time to vocalize those. I'll answer anything that I can while I'm still on. Yeah, for anybody who's new to getting into this, I definitely would recommend, if you are a fan of drones and you want to learn how to do this, the Mavic Mini series is probably one of the best ways to get into them. Not poo-pooing any other drones, not talking down about anything else. I like the price point that the Mavic Mini comes in at. I believe it starts at $499 or $449 or $450, however you want to say it. But it offers a lot of nice, easy features. Very simple to fly, very lightweight, compact, and portable. I like that too. You spring for the Fly More combo kit, which I would always recommend that you do. You get those extra batteries, you get that carrying case, you get the extra propellers, you get all the stuff that you would have to buy separately that you might try to buy over time, and it's usually only like another $100 increase versus each battery being $40 to $50 plus the charge hub, plus the case, plus all this extra stuff. So yeah, definitely would recommend that. And other than that, I mean, the biggest thing I can tell people with flying is just get into it. If you are someone who's interested in doing it, watch a couple of YouTube videos, learn about the products first, understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So, you know, I have people who come up and they're like, I'm more of an action-based cinematographer. I want to get more into that side of things. What should I be looking at? Depends on the price point, but I might push them into the Mavic Mini 3 or the Mini 3 Pro just because of its tracking capabilities, its sensors. It's overall one of the nicer drones you can get at a lower price point. If they have something to do, I might honestly tell them to look at something like the actual Mavic 3. The Cine edition is amazing. It's a very powerful camera, various filters involved. That's a $5,000 or $6,000 drone. But their entry-level one, just the standard Mavic 3, I believe starts at $2,500, which, again, not the cheapest thing in the world, but it's a great drone, and you'll have it for a few years, especially if you're used to flying these guys. I think one of the biggest kickbacks I get right now is that with drones as a whole, there are so many new styles coming out all the time. People are constantly improving stuff. I make the same claim I did with cameras and cell phones years ago. There's a certain point in time where we get to an evolution within the technology where it can only go so much further until it makes that next big leap. So at the current moment with drones, I'd say we're in this period of lull where for the next few years we shouldn't see anything hit the market that is so new that we are just blown away. Yes, you'll see some amazing features, longer battery time, better frequency rates, I would say better camera quality, that sort of thing. But as far as something crazy changing the way that we look at drones, I don't see us seeing that much anytime soon. But I will admit, drones, they do come out with a new one every couple years, and usually once the new one comes out, the old one does feel pretty obsolete. Looking at the Mavic Mini 3 Pro now compared to the Mini 2 or the Mini SE or just the regular Mini back in the day, it is a huge night and day difference. Great battery life, great video quality, tracking features now, and it's all below that 249 grams, which makes it almost street legal in every country that you can imagine. When I say that too, always triple check what the country's flying regulations are when it comes to the drones. I know places like, as my student was saying earlier, he was from Korea. He said there's a lot of issues with flying in Korea, and so there's a lot of protocols within doing that because of North and South Korea and how they interact with their drones. So always important, look into where you're flying, or again, when you buy a drone, if you're taking it somewhere with you, look into what it is about that product that you need to know before you get into another country. Oh, Dr. Kraken, great presentation. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I try. I've been teaching these camera classes for probably about 7 or 8 months, 6 or 7 months now. So glad that everybody gets something out of them. Glad you guys keep coming back for more. Like I said, next Thursday will be my intro to camera class, which I know is probably my most popular one out of the bunch. It's also the longest class. Usually drones, I get everybody going pretty quickly, and we're out. Intro to camera class and intermediate camera class, I'm usually talking to like 7:30, so usually a little bit later. Regardless, guys, I'll keep this open for a few more minutes while I pack up all my belongings here. Please answer or ask any questions while you got me, and I'll do my best to answer them if you have any. Alright, on that note, doesn't look like anybody but Dr. Kraken had anything for me. So, again, thank you for the kind words. Glad you enjoyed the presentation. Anybody has any comments, questions, concerns, you've got my email, you've got my phone number. Give me a call anytime. I'm in the store every day except for Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And as always,